at the base of the heart, which is up here, it's connected to the blood vessels. So one of the things you got to do is you got to kind of cut that pericardium off of the vessels without cutting too many of the vessels themselves. And you can always trim it up later. So if something feels rubbery, like a rubber band, that's a vessel. Don't cut it. So I cut off most of the pericardium. And the outside layer that I'm looking at here, this is the fibrous layer. You turn it inside out, and that's the serous layer in there. And you could actually take some tweezers and you could score it with a scalpel and you could peel that apart. You could separate the two layers. So that's what we would call our parietal pericardium. Fibrous layer, serous layer. Okay? All right. And it's got fat associated with it and some ligamentous material. All right. Then you got the heart itself here. And you got to figure out what's the anterior. Okay? So that's not as simple as it looks in the drawings. Okay? So what you want to do is you want to find the pulmonary trunk, which will be a big vessel that crosses right to left. Okay? And it's this thing right here. That's the pulmonary trunk. So you find the pulmonary trunk, and as long as you've got that crossing right to left in front of you, you know you're looking at the anterior. And then I should be able to find the left auricle, which is this meaty flap right there. And over here is the right auricle, and that's the bottom edge of the right atrium. So really the atrium is just this tiny little thing under between my fingers there. That's the ventricle. Okay? Left atrium here, left ventricle there. The interventricular sulcus then is this line that runs down there, kind of filled with fat. So it doesn't go straight down the heart, but it goes left to right. Okay? So that's the anterior interventricular sulcus, and then this fatty layer up here just below the auricles is the coronary sulcus that goes all the way around. So right ventricle here, left ventricle there. The base of, or not the base, the apex of the heart is mostly left ventricle. When you cut it, and I'll put a diagram on the board, I have you cut it just about 1 finger's width away from the interventricular septum, following the line of the septum and then along the coronary sulcus. So let me show you what that looks like here. And like I said, I'll sketch it on the board. So do this once you found the anterior, you're going to cut it on the anterior. If you cut it on the posterior, everything's going to be backwards, and it's going to make everything you're trying to identify really confusing. Okay. So that's the sulcus there where my finger is. So I'm going to kind of cut it about the width of 1 finger to either side. Extend it up towards the sulcus. And then about 1 finger width below the sulcus around to the back side. Before I open it up, I'm just going to stick my finger in here, and I should, if I go through that slice, this guy's meaty. Now I open up into a room in there, then I cut it in the right spot. If I don't, I cut it in the wrong spot. I got my finger in, and I can move it around in a kind of a hollow cavity in there. If I can't do that, then that means I cut it too close to the septum, and I've actually cut through the myometrium, the muscle part, and I got to move a little bit more to the side. Okay. So it's okay, I could verify that. I didn't cut quite deep enough, so I got to cut just a little bit deeper.
Is it tough to cut?
Hmm?
The muscles are tough?
It's pretty tough, yes. You'd be surprised at how much effort it takes to cut through this. Okay. So now I've cut it open and I'm looking into the left ventricle. Okay. I'm eventually going to cut this whole flap off so I can see it more easily, but before you do that, you kind of want to look in there and see the things that you're going to have to cut through to get it off. Right? And I think, guys up here in the front, you can definitely see all those little ridges in here. And you can see these thin little fibers. Those are the heartstrings, the chordae tendineae. And they connect to the cusps of the, in this case, the bicuspid valve. So my finger up there is pointing up to the bicuspid valve. And then those chordae tendineae come down and they connect to this big structure between my fingers down in there. That's one of the papillary muscles. Okay. And those are connected to the chordae tendineae. All right. So once I kind of have an idea what that looks like, I can go ahead and cut this flap, make it easier to keep open. I'm going to cut through one of the papillary muscles, which is why I want you to look inside before you do it. And once you kind of cut the inner part, it's a lot easier to keep that flap open. Now I can kind of pull it back and I can see in there a lot easier. And so you look at the trabeculate carne and everything else, and then you're going to want to see the valve. And when you want to see the valve, you're going to identify the left atrium. You're going to be able to see the cusps of the valve sticking down here. And you're going to go ahead and extend your cuts from the ventricle up into the atria, right through the auricle. And you'll make a flap in this wall that you can lift up. And that'll actually take one of the cusps of the valve with it. With a little careful dissection, you can actually cut the whole valve out, which I'll do and show it to you guys. You're cutting through the AV canal at that point, the atrioventricular canal, which is where the valve is. So you kind of destroy the valve when you do that. But then you can see how the blood flows. So I'll sketch that up on the board. And I think the handout that I gave you, didn't I put an asterisk next to the ones that you can find on the big heart? Or did I make a separate list? Okay. So, most of the structures that you're going to identify, you're going to do in the models, but a few of them you can identify in here. And it's definitely things like the auricles, the valves, the trabeculate carne, the pectinate muscles, the chordae tendineae, papillary muscles. You can identify that all pretty easily. Okay. When it gets to the vessels, you're gonna trim it off a little bit.
So we're just using the same list you gave us last week?
Yep. The way you identify the vessels is you stick your finger through, okay, and you try to find out where it comes out. So for instance, it's going to be hard to do, but in the back of the left ventricle here, I'm going to find the aorta. There it is, okay. I'll stick my finger up through that, and I got to trim it off. This is the aortic arch. I can actually reach down there, I can touch my finger. Okay, so I know that what I'm in there is the aorta. Okay, that's how you do it. And if you want to visualize it a little bit better, you take one of these probes, take the blunt end, not the sharper end, or you'll stick it right through the wall of the heart. And you can do that same thing. You can find the canal, stick it through there, wrap it around, eventually, there it goes, out it goes. Okay. So now I can see I must be going through the aorta. Do it from here to here. Okay? All right. I'm sure you'll have lots of questions. Just don't cut into it until you're sure you're looking at the anterior, okay? I say that about 6 times, and usually I get about 1 per class. It still does it backwards. So if you want me to come around and make sure you're looking at it from the front before you cut it, that's probably a good idea, okay? I think I have 5 more. I have 7 more, so pretty much anybody wants to cut one up can. Okay. All right.